Hey guys, welcome to the video for dividing polynomials. We're in the last lesson for Unit 6. Our essential question is how can we use previously learned information and apply it to new situations? So there are some steps when we're dividing polynomials. I know it sounds scary, but it's honestly, we're using the factoring that we've been using all units. So it is very familiar to what you're doing. It's just, again, one extra step. So the first thing you want to do is when you're dividing, you always have two parts to your fraction. You have the numerator and you have the denominator, or you have the front part or the second part. So the first thing you want to do is that you want to factor out the first part of the fraction. After you do that, you want to check to see if you can factor the second part of the fraction. Oops. My writing is not great today. Second part. After you've factored everything, you want to cancel the common factor. And you're going to write the solution. So, for example, in this first problem, we have a trinomial being divided by x plus 5. So the first thing you want to check for is you want to factor this top part first. So I know that's a trinomial, so since it's 3 terms, I want to do the AC method and factor it. Once I factor that, I'm going to get 2 factors. On the bottom here, can I factor x plus 5 any further? No. Again, you always look for a GCF first, but the biggest GCF I have is 1, so there's nothing I can really do down there. So if we fast forward, after I factor this, I should get x plus 2 as one of my factors and x plus 5 as the other factor. So now I have my top part is factored, my bottom part is as factored as it can be. So after you do that, then you cancel the common factor that they have. And by common factor is the common grouping that they have. So there aren't any parentheses around this guy here, but you want to think of it like a group. So I notice that the two groups that are the same are x plus 5. We have an x plus 5 in the top and an x plus 5 in the bottom. Sorry, I'm moving my sticky note. So those are common factors and they'll cancel, which means our answer here would be just x plus 2. And you can write it in parentheses if you want, but you don't have to. So what's really happening here? They're saying, hey, factor this. I'm giving you one of the factors, find me the other one. So they're giving you this one, they want you to find that one, is basically what's happening here. Okay, so before we actually start, I do want to let you know that there are 2 ways that we will see these problems, but they mean exactly the same thing. So in this one, where we have x squared plus 7x plus 10 divided by x plus 5 in a fraction bar, that's the same thing as writing x squared plus 7x plus 10 with an actual division sign dividing x plus 5. They mean exactly the same thing. The process is exactly the same. They just look a little bit different. All right, so we're going to start off with number 1, 8x squared minus 37x minus 15 divided by x minus 5. Again, this is still division. We're dividing the polynomials. So I'm going to go ahead and set it up like this. 8x, I'll set it up over here actually. 8x squared minus 37x minus 15 divided by x minus 5. Well, the first thing you want to do is to factor out the first part of your fraction. Not fraction. Yeah, it is your fraction. The first part of it. So when we do this, we always want to check for a GCF first. And I do not have anything other than 1, so I'm going to go ahead and move on to the AC method. If you're still stuck on what AC method is, just make sure you refer back to the other videos. I'm not going to spend a ton of time in this one because I kind of want to make sure we get the gist of what dividing polynomials is. So our A here is 8, B is negative 37, and C is negative 15. I want to make sure those are in standard form, because if it's not, then my A, B, and C are going to be out of order. Okay, so then A times C, which is 8 times negative 15, is going to be negative 120. And then my B is negative 37. And I'm looking for 2 numbers that multiply to negative 120, but add to negative 37. I'm looking for it. 120, All right, I'm just going to use a calculator trick that we learned that one time. So divided by x, and then negative 120 divided by x plus x. All right. All right, so I got 3 and negative 40. So 3 and negative 40 multiply to make negative 120, but they add to make negative 37. So we have 8x squared plus 3x minus 40x minus 37. Not minus 37, minus 15. Because what we're really doing is we're just splitting up that middle term. Okay, so those last 2 terms stay the same. And at this step, I'm going to factor by grouping. So I have my GCF of the first two terms is just 1x, and inside I have 8x plus 3. And then my GCF of the next two terms is going to be 5, but it's actually going to be negative 5 because this first term in the group is negative. I'm going to make sure we can see that negative sign there. Remove it. There we go. Okay, so that would be negative 5. Negative 40 divided by negative 5 is positive 8, and then negative 15 divided by negative 5 is positive 3. You want to make sure your parentheses match here. So my two factors are x minus 5 and 8x plus 3. Now again, we just factored that trinomial from earlier, right? So this is the same thing as 8x squared minus 37x minus 15. So now we're going to do our division. We have x minus 5, and you have 8x plus 3, all divided by what we had originally, which was x minus 5. Okay? We're dividing it out. So we're trying to get rid of the common factor. So what's the factor that they have in common? The x minus 5, which means our answer for this problem is 8x plus 3. So again, it's just one extra step after you factor. You don't want to factor and stop because you are dividing something out. You're taking away one of the factors. So they're giving you one of the factors, and they want you to tell you, they want you to tell them the other one. Okay, moving on to number 2. Okay, so the first thing you want to look at is you want to factor the front part of your fraction, or the first part, which is going to be this top part here. X squared plus 4x minus 5. Let me go ahead and make this a different color so it doesn't merge in with the other problem. Okay. First thing I always check for is a GCF. I don't have one other than 1, so then I move on to my AC method. A times C here is going to be negative 5. My B here is 4. Okay. My two magic numbers are going to be positive 5 and negative 1. So I have x squared plus 5x minus 1x minus 5. And again, it doesn't matter where you put the 5 and negative 1. Now that I have 4 terms, I'm going to factor by grouping. In my first set of, in my first group, my GCF is going to be just x. And then I have x plus 5. And then my second group, my GCF is going to be negative 1. And then I have x plus 5. Make sure your parentheses match. Now I'm going a lot faster than what you would probably normally do, but again, I just want you to make sure you understand the gist of what we're doing, that it's basically the same thing as factoring every time. We have x minus 1 and x plus 5 as our two factors. And if it is ever too fast, you can always slow down the video by pausing it. So we're dividing it by x plus 5. Okay. Well, what's our common factor here? Just x plus 5, right? So that means our solution is x minus 1. Okay? All right, and then last one, it is type of a word problem, but you're doing basically the same process. Jamie has a rectangular garden with an area of 5x squared plus 16x minus 16. If the width is x plus 4, what is the length? Okay, so they're not asking us to find the area. They've given us the area. Well, if I think back to middle school, the formula for area of a rectangle is length times width. Well, in this case, they gave me the area, right? They gave me the area. They also gave me the width, but they did not give me the length, okay? They don't give me that. So I got to solve for the length. Well, how would I do that? Well, let's manipulate this formula a little bit. If I want to solve for the length, get L by itself, what would I do here? Well, I've got to get rid of this W then. Well, how would I get rid of the W? I would divide by W because they're connected by multiplication. So I have L equals A divided by W. Now I have a formula where I can solve for the length. Okay, so in the top part of my fraction here, I have the area. So that's going to be 5x squared plus 16x minus 16. I'm just using the formula I just got. And I'm dividing that all by the width. Well, I know the width. It is x plus 4. And now this problem is set up basically like the other two. What's difficult about this problem? They don't set it up for you. And that's always going to be the hardest part about word problems. But you have to make sure you can overcome that by thinking about what's similar to this that I've already learned. All right, so then we would do what we would normally do. We're going to factor that top part. So we're going to have 5x squared plus 16x minus 16. And I can't really do much with that bottom part. I can't factor that any further. So I'm going to look at the top part of my fraction. There is no GCF, so I'm going to move on to the AC method. A here is 5, B here is 16, and C is negative 16. So AC is going to be negative 80. B is going to be 16. So my two magic numbers there are, let's see here, I don't know all the factors of 80, so I'm gonna guess and check in my calculator. 4 and 20. So we're gonna have 20 and negative 4. Okay, so again, when we factor, the first term and the last term always stay the same. We're just basically splitting up that 16 in the middle, plus 20x minus 4x minus 16. Okay, now we're going to factor by grouping since we have 4 terms now. In my first group, my GCF is going to be 5x. The biggest number I could take out is 5, and I can take out at most 1x. And then the leftovers is going to be x plus 4 on the inside. My GCF of the next row are going to be 4, but I'm going to take out negative 4 because the first term in the group is negative. And I have left over x plus 4. I check to make sure my parentheses match, and they do. What color do I want to use next? What color have I not used yet? I haven't used red. All right, so in my first group, I have, or first factor, I have 5x minus 4, and my second factor, I have x plus 4. All right, well, I'm dividing all of this by x plus 4. So what's my common factor here? What color to use? I don't have an orange, let's use orange. X plus 4 is my common factor, so what I have left is 5x minus 4. That means the length of this rectangle is 5x minus 4, because they gave us the width and they want us to find the length. All right, so that is it for dividing polynomials. Again, it isn't anything different from factoring. We're just adding one extra step. If you have any questions, just please feel free to come in and ask.